like you said, everything's an opportunity. It's all about getting reps in all the time, every day. Kind of the attitude of like, hey, don't waste a day, don't waste an experience, don't waste, that moment. You should always be training for something in everything that you're doing, whether that's, you get up in the morning and read a book, you're establishing good habits, you're training yourself in some way, either down one road or down another, right? Down a negative road or down a positive with every little decision that you make.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Invictus Mindset Podcast. Today's guest is a CrossFit Games athlete. His resume is too long to go down that rabbit hole, but without further ado, Mr. Dan Bailey. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you guys for having me on.
I am really excited to peel back the layers on your story, but before we get into the peaks and valleys and everything that you've kind of gone through in your journey so far, thanks for joining us today, man, on this lovely Saturday morning.
Yeah, dude, it's been a while. I haven't seen it in a while. I think this is the first time I've seen that lovely face in probably like 4 years or so. So this is
I know
great.
We got to cross paths a little bit when you were out here living in San Diego, and we got to share some good laughs. Actually, I have something really cool to tell you before we get into it. I was always impressed with this narrative within the CrossFit space that bench press wasn't important. And I always admired that you gave time and attention to the big three: the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. And ironically, 2 weeks ago, I actually PR'd my bench at 315. Yeah. And I was like, dang, I got to tell Dan that. Dan's going to be stoked.
I'm fired up. 3 wheels. That's the milestone in the bench press journey.
Yeah. I thought it was like a cool thing to share, considering my arms are like longer than every CrossFit Games athlete known to man.
Yeah, it's a challenge when it comes to that. Absolutely.
But I thought it was funny to kind of share that with you, man. But you just came off this really awesome experience at the Rogue Invitational. What was that kind of like? Kind of crossing paths with some of the pillars within the CrossFit space that really helped build the sport to where it is now.
It's amazing. When I posted about it, we're there for about 4 days hanging out together, and we really did get a lot of time to FaceTime with everybody, to hang out and do things. We had only one event a day. It's always just awesome. It's like like you said, you're hanging out with these people who are legends in the sport. And then outside of that, like, they're legends just in the CrossFit community for everything that they've done in a way to give back to the community, operating gyms. They've been the ones doing it the longest. And to be successful at that, you have to be a very special type of person. You have to be a very interesting person as well, I think. And all of them are that. So anytime I get to have conversations with anybody, there's just so many things you pick up on, whether it's just a good conversation with somebody catching up or talking about business or whatever it might be. It's awesome. Like, it's, outside of just the competition, obviously getting to hang out with that group is super special.
Yeah, it's so much bigger than just fitness. I mean, we're looking back now on over a decade within the sport, and you guys not only, set the precedent for the athletic side of things, but as you mentioned, the mindset component, the business component, the relationships, the brand awareness. I mean, we're seeing agents within the sport now and people doing this full time. And that was kind of non-existent back in the day when you and Rich were throwing down at Tennessee Tech.
Yeah. It was non-existent for Rich for maybe 1 or 2 years there, but then it became, he did so well, it became such a reality, but there were only a very few people at that time who could even conceivably, do just competing full time. Most everybody else had something else going on somewhere. You pretty much had to, which is just the nature of the beginning of the sport, At the same time, I was super blessed with, everybody that I got to partner with and that I'm still partnered with on some levels. But yeah, it was definitely a little bit of it was a grind back in the early days for sure. There just wasn't as much opportunity. There wasn't as much money in the space. You have the Rogue Invitational now, which it's not a qualification for anything. It's just an event outside of its own, putting up a prize purse of $250,000 to the winner. Like, that's amazing. And no matter what, if you went there, you walked away with $5,000. Like, that's pretty nice. Like, for your efforts, like, that's a pretty good deal. So it's been really cool for things to start swinging that way. I hope they continue to. I hope all the athletes that are coming up have those abilities to, when they succeed, dedicate their time towards it, and nothing else really. So you're seeing that now with a handful of guys like Justin Medeiros and, the Panchik brothers. And a lot of them can put a lot of focus on training because of the way the space has grown and the community has taken care of the athletes in some respect. And, businesses have found value in the athletes and what they do. And CrossFit athletes are very unique in that a lot of them too are not just great athletes, but they're amazing coaches. They have a lot to offer to other people in regards to not just an entertainment value on the floor.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head there. And when I get to cross paths with you, something that really stands out is this concept of give. You've always been such a giver, such a man of faith. And, what does it feel like to you laying the foundation for people like you just mentioned to now, build careers around this? And it's like you and a lot of those, legends athletes, like Miko Salo, we talked about Jason Kalipa and Rich Froning and Chris Clever, Julie Fouché, Josh Bridges, Annie Sakamoto. And then obviously, on the programming and the logistics side of things, we obviously have to talk about Dave Castro. What's it like, rubbing elbows with some of those guys, but also knowing that wow, there's going to come a day where you're sitting around a campfire with knuckleheads like me telling stories about how you laid a little bit of that foundational groundwork for people to make this a career. That's pretty special, man. That's not something that necessarily pays your bills right now or goes on your resume, but it's like when you think about your footprint on this earth, you're a part of that, man. That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's an honor really to be a little piece of that puzzle in some regard. And the thing I think about it is, those things may not pay the bills, and knowing that I was one of those people may not, pan out for the rest of my life in terms of doing those things. But if you're doing it only for that, I don't think you're going to do it very well in the end. You have to have some other passion and love for, what you're doing and what you're striving for outside of just the dollar value. I mean, those things are cool and they need to be there. But I think especially when you look at that group of people, and like you said, even Dave, dedicating so much time to whether it be training, to making the event look awesome, to making, being the fittest man or woman or team on earth a worthy pursuit, as people who are just passionate about gaining that title. They just wanted that. They wanted to be that person. They wanted to achieve that goal, and were willing to do whatever it took and sacrifice whatever it took to get there. So yeah, it's it's a super honor to be considered with all those other names, anywhere in there with those other names, just because those are, the giants of the sport. And I think all those people had that mindset that I know that this is what I want to do. I know that I have purpose in this, and I'll figure out the money and the details as I go along. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But this is what I'm passionate about. I'm going to succeed here. And they all went after it, and they did.
I love that. I heard a quote earlier this week that was somewhere along the lines of, there's not always a path or a roadmap. There's just a machete. I was like, okay, that's kind of what I see a little bit with the sport of CrossFit. And speaking on the main man himself, Mr. Dave Castro, is he going to call you on our podcast today the way he did on Sivan's podcast?
I know. I doubt it. I didn't know that he did that, or when he did do that.
I'm one of those guys that whenever I interview pillars within the sport like you, I go down the rabbit hole from podcasts you were on 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And Sivan was picking your buttons a little bit and just kind of steering the conversation varying ways. And that's another guy that's kind of been in the sport for a really long time. And you look at him, I mean, in some ways, he probably kind of laid the groundwork a little bit for guys like the Buttery Bros who are kind of up and coming and making these feature films, because he was the first wizard behind the curtain that kind of got this unique access to athletes. And he was somebody that kind of followed you and Rich around early on. What was that like? In the beginning, it's you do this sport because you love it and you're trying to, pursue the greatest expression of yourself and seek your edge. But then all of a sudden you start getting camera people around and you're like, oh, wait, I have to kind of talk with a little bit of a filter, or I have to behave a certain way because there's eyes and ears on us. Now, what was that kind of like within the media space?
Oh, it's intimidating for sure on some levels, especially when you don't know everybody. You don't know, these people are out here to do the right thing or do a good thing, to put, media out there. But you're always cognizant of what you say or don't say. And over the years, I did a pretty good job of just, being quiet and being reserved. And that's just kind of how I am naturally. But it's definitely something you have to adapt to a little bit, especially like you said, everything was so new. And then, the fact that I got to train with Rich for those 2 years or a year and a half down there, and he was the guy. So there was always a lot of cameras down there and a lot of people coming around, asking questions and doing things. And it was all fun. I mean, I made a lot of great friends that way. I made a lot of great connections. Like there's a lot of media people, obviously Heber and Mars, that I still talk to today that I'm still really good friends with. And I got to work with a bunch. So, I mean, it's not something that I thought I was ever going to encounter or have to deal with, but it's like anything else. You make mistakes and you kind of figure out how to deal with it as you go along.
Yeah. And I want to be careful too, where sometimes like, I want to be very clear here. Like, I don't think that you were necessarily like below Rich. Like sometimes people view it that way, and you kind of articulated it that way. I think it was just different, right? Like you have this high level Division I track and field, piece on your resume. Your type 2 muscle fiber component is really high. You've always been known as somebody within the sport of CrossFit with really good body composition. And let's be frank, a lot of people in the world want that. They want to train for sanity and vanity.
Yeah.
And they want to look a certain way. And you did a really good job of like, yeah, CrossFit's really important. It's something I like to do, but that wasn't everything that you did. You started to bring in traditional strength and conditioning principles. And then you went on and, got your master's degree in, exercise science or something similar to, the strength and conditioning field.
Correct.
You bring a world of knowledge to the sport. And I think, as somebody myself who worked at a, high level university for a little while, sometimes the term and the principles of CrossFit are a little bit neglected at a university. And so being able to bridge and kind of be a gateway between strength and conditioning principles and CrossFit, I feel like was a little bit of a unique thing that you really made cool. I mean, we talk about guys like Pavel Tsatsouline. We talk about Dan John. We talk about Wendler. We talk about Louis Simmons. And these are guys that like really highly respected within the strength and conditioning field. And you're doing this really cool thing of like bringing them all to the table for a conversation. And I really admire that. Would you touch on that a little bit?
Like you said, I mean, my traditional background was just in regular strength and conditioning, and, it wasn't CrossFit based or anything like that. And it is kind of a shame how you touched on that a little bit, that like CrossFit sometimes gets a negative connotation in the strength and conditioning room, because most of the time the people who have that connotation see it not for what it actually is and how it's supposed to be done, right? Or how it's supposed to be utilized in that scenario. But the traditional, background that I had, I brought that into, because there wasn't a lot of articles initially on how to train for the CrossFit Games. Like it wasn't, there was stuff on the journal that was highly valuable to me. Like eventually, like, Westside Borbone, Louis, and a lot of them contributed. And I was glued to the journal at the start, just trying to get anything I could get my hands on, because it was so good, like practical information, it's how to coach somebody, how to sets, reps, all those different things. So what I brought into that was the track and field background. And it's like, okay, I know, in track and field, I have to run a quarter mile as fast as possible. And here's how I break that down to become good at it. Okay, well, now I need to take all those principles that are virtually the same, and I need to figure out how I can make my Jackie time faster by doing all those things. So I got to get better at rowing. I got to get better at squatting, and I got to be able to do 30 unbroken pull-ups at least under fatigue. How do you train for that, right? What are the different ways that you break? Even though like CrossFit is interval training inside itself, it's like, well, how do you apply the different principles of adding in rest, doing different intervals and all those different things to get better at those segments that come up at the CrossFit Games, that come up at regionals, in a way that you can tie them all together and you just become an overall fitter athlete. And so reading about a lot of the people that you talked about, it was like, I try this and I try that. Okay, these guys say this. Like obviously Louis Simmons is very strong. A lot of people that come out of his gym are very, very talented. And so I'm going to try some of this stuff that they do. This worked for me. That didn't. Okay, I'm going to grab this. This is now like in my tool chest, and I will not do these things. You know what I mean? Because I saw such big gains from it, or it helped me out so much. And so you do that over years, and it's like, yeah, all the different specialists you find, and especially with, Rich at Tennessee Tech when we were there. I mean, we would just pick things left and right and try things and experiment, and like, this was really cool. Let's do this again, and let's keep this. That sucked and it didn't work. Let's not do that. And like, it was easy to break down like all the different things we did in 2012. And for me personally, at least, hey, this is where I fell short at the games. So like, and I know you look back at the training and it's like, well, you didn't really prep for those things. So now you need to bring all that wealth of knowledge back and prep for 2013 in this way. You know what I mean? So
yeah, the way you guys like put things together was so cool. Some of my favorite YouTube videos to this day were just some of those whiteboard sessions where it's like, hey man, what'd you do yesterday? What'd you do yesterday? And you kind of just start spitballing on a whiteboard, and then you kind of like, strategically put things together because there's such a wealth of knowledge between all you guys that were training together there. And, there's so much trial and error within the theoretical and the practical application of strength and conditioning. And I think that you guys had the humility to be like, yeah, I'm going to try this. I might be wrong, but that's okay because, every no or every, wrong answer gets us closer to the right answer. And obviously, with what did you have? Like 5 top 10 appearances at the games?
Yeah, 5 top 10. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so impressive, man. And for your body and your mind and the resilience factor to kind of hold up there was, I mean, it still is super impressive, man. You should be very, very proud of that. And just kind of bridging the gap between all these cool things and cool relationships that you've done. But one thing I did want to chat with you a little bit about today that I think a lot of people don't know about you is some of the cool things that you've done in Africa. Would you touch on that a little bit? I feel like that's a, roots below the surface level thing that like, we're not talking about it to get accolades or anything like that. It's just a really cool thing that I think shares a little bit about your character.
I appreciate that. And yeah, to preface that story, there's different seasons of life for everybody, and everybody goes through different seasons of life. Some are more intense than others, and some are more, focused on different areas than necessarily. Not every season is the same, obviously. And so for me, I mean, I was raised to give back. I was raised to help people, both by my parents, and I've been a Christian basically since high school, I would say. So very early on in life. And I was always the goody two shoes in the house. Like I was always kind of the guy trying to do the right thing and those kind of things. But because I was, raised that way, I understood, the purpose and my responsibility to give back to other people and to help people out wherever I can, and to set that example in that way, and not just talk about things, but actually be about it and do it. And so in 2014, 2015-ish, I was in San Diego at the time, and I was not really in a financial position to help out a lot of people. Like it just wasn't, I was living on the boat at the time, had lost my job working for the Department of Defense at the time, just because of some crazy like financial foul up. A bunch of people lost their positions. I'd moved all the way out there just for that. And so that was basically my primary, source of income at the time, outside of competing and some of the sponsorships and those kind of things. But there's seasons of life, like I mentioned, where I know that God has put something on my heart, and I hesitate to say that God's talking to me, because it's not like the skies opened up and like I heard this booming voice or a burning bush. It's nothing like that. It's just the fact that I study the Word of God. I read the Bible constantly every day, and pray every day. And sometimes things just hit me in a way that it's like, I know that I need to do this. It may not make a lot of sense on paper, but I have a calm about it. Like I have a certainty about it. I know that it needs to happen, and I'm going to do it. And building a school in Africa through the CrossFit for Hope Foundation, for whatever reason, that just grabbed onto me. Like, it could have been any number of things, but for whatever reason, it was that. And I saw that we were doing that, and it enabled people who don't have any opportunity an opportunity to improve themselves. And having gotten to go over there and see the school, so basically I donated money to build a school, help build a cistern, and then a pit toilet as well. And so the school is nothing more than what you would imagine a regular, I don't know, let's just say high school classroom looks like. That's like the entire school in this little village. It was run by a program called Coins for Kenya through the CrossFit Foundation, and Dallin Frampton, which I believe is Jim's CrossFit spearhead out in Utah. He kind of headed that connection up with CrossFit. And so when I knew this was something I wanted to do, like they were really fired up, and it took me a little bit to get out there just because of the competition season and some other things. But when I finally did get to get out there, it was so cool to see like the fruits of your labor and see what was produced by this like discontent that was put in you with someone else's situation. Right. And when I say that, like people over there, you know, we've been around a lot, and we have TV, we have internet, you know what it's like in a third world country. You can see it, you can look it up, you can research it. But when you go and stay there with them, when you actually like walk in their footsteps in that way, it's mind blowing. And it really hits home, like how many people around the world survive in those conditions. And honestly, I met a ton of really happy people living that way, like totally happy. Like, this is just what they do. You know, we stood on a hill at one point, and as far as the eye can see out into like the African desert or bush, are just these little communities just everywhere, you know, and every day people are getting up and doing the thing. And like, you know, like I said, you can read about it, you know, it's there, you know, that goes on everywhere in the world, but to see it was just another thing. So in the end state of it was, this is awesome because it's an opportunity that's there for them. Like if they want to continue living the way that they want, like that's totally fine. Like you can be happy living any number of ways. And the things that they have probably help keep them grounded in the most important things in life, your family, your friendships, your relationships, you know, because life is just simpler. You know what I mean? In some aspects, life is simpler. But the school provided an opportunity for them to basically get an education. You know, the school that they were at before that, it had a mud floor. When it rained, there was a river that went across the floor. You can't write, you can't read books, you can't do anything, right? You just can't, there's no way you're going to learn in that atmosphere. And so having a concrete floor, a real roof, you know, concrete walls, all those good things, all those simple things that we take for granted here, just enables them to have a productive learning experience. And so the top kids from those classes would actually get scholarships to go on to high school, which would not be in that village. It would be somewhere else. And then obviously the top kids from high school have the opportunity to go to university and all those different things and get scholarships for that. So it wasn't necessarily just like a handout. I'm not just putting something in somebody's pocket and saying, well, here's, you know, X amount of dollars. I did it. You know what I mean? It's like, well, here's this thing now. Here is your opportunity. If you want to work hard and do this thing, you can do it. You know what I mean? You have the opportunity there for it. So
I really appreciate you sharing that, man. Like that was one of those special conversations that we got to have between training sessions randomly at the old Little Italy location of CrossFit Invictus. And I was just mind boggled by the entirety of the story, right? People know Dan Bailey, this CrossFit Games athlete, but there's layers. And it's bigger than just a donation. It's the fact that you went out there. It's the fact that you walked in their shoes. It's the fact that you got to feel what they experience. And the fact that they have so much gratitude having very little. And sometimes we get stuck in the nuances. And, you know, you were in the thick of some adversity yourself. You moved all the way across the country for this awesome job opportunity that didn't work out. And you know, untangling some of your personal thought patterns and some of your limiting beliefs and gaining a better spiritual relationship with yourself and with faith. All of those things brought you to that calling. And I think it's so special and so unique. And I mean, you've continued to do things like that. I believe, if I don't stand corrected, you've done some cool things with the Keala Foundation as well. And a couple weeks ago, I got to connect a little bit with Aaron Hoff, who is the founder of the Keala Foundation. What's that experience been kind of like, you know, trying to help some of the challenges that take place out in Hawaii?
It's an interesting dynamic there because the saying goes like Kauai is like the most beautiful place you're ever going to visit. And it really is until you look under the rug. Like that's kind of a statement because it's pretty, there's a lot of like heavy stuff that goes on, especially in the younger group, because there's no outlet. There's no, you're kind of on the island and there's just a culture there of drug abuse and those kind of things. And so Aaron grew up in that culture. got kind of trapped by it for a number of years, and then, turned his life over to the Lord, completely turned himself around, and didn't want kids to go through that experience that he went through, right? And wanted to provide something like, again, like nobody's forcing your hand, but here's this opportunity to come here and do this thing and be positive and hang out with friends who are also positive and making the right choices in life and making good choices to advance themselves. And so he's basically grown that with his team there and the help of, a lot of CrossFit athletes, a lot of different companies have been involved helping it out to provide free classes basically to the kids. So they have a place to go. You know what I mean? They have a place to go, like a meal a day, a transportation back and forth, and they can just be in that positive atmosphere. And it's awesome. Like Aaron's one of my best friends. Like he's one of those guys, for whatever reason, we get along really well. I don't know if he brought me up at all, but I think one of the reasons we're so close is he'll always tell the story, and we don't have to get into it here, but that he saved my life. And my side of the story is that he almost killed me. So,
he told me that story when you guys went like,
scuba diving.
Was it like deep diving? And then he put his airpiece in your mouth because yours ran out of air or something happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's my own fault. Like, and I have video footage of all of it. I've never shared it, because I just feel dumb for doing it. I could have killed myself, but never took a scuba diving lesson. And I dove basically down to 100 feet. The equipment we were using was not in great shape. It was not like supposed to have like primary, secondary, extra tank of air, like the whole thing. There was just one primary that basically had a malfunction at 100 feet while I was down there. And Aaron and I had to sort it out together while I could breathe, basically. So like it's the only time in my life where, it still gives me chills. Like the hair on my neck is standing up right now. It's the only time in my life where it's like, oh, you're going to die. Like you're like face to face with moving on to the next realm right now. But as God would have it, or luck would have it, whatever you want to call it, that's how Aaron and I bonded very well that year.
He's such a good dude. I chatted with Matt Bickle also, and he also said like he loves Aaron. He loves, all the different conversations, his relationship with him, but he's like, yeah, that dude's going to take you on an adventure. You're going to jump off a really high cliff, or you're going to go on some really gnarly things that you're like, ooh, what did I get myself into?
100%. Like he charges. It's amazing. He's got all his fingers, hands, and toes and everything. Like he gets after it. And most of the time I remember by the time, like on a year basis, there's things that I say no to now that I'm just like, I'm all set. Like I'll go coach a class. Like, I'm going to go do this today. I'm good. But then every now and then I forget, and like I'll get myself in some situation. I'm just sitting there shaking my head, like looking at him, and he's just got this big dumb grin on his face, like he loves it. He loves it. So no, I love Aaron. I love what he does, and I love supporting him in any way that I can.
That's very cool, man. Well, I appreciate you allowing me to bookmark some of our CrossFit banter to escape a little bit and talk about some of the cool real world application of some of the doors that have opened for you within the CrossFit journey that you've been on. One other avenue that I'd love to discuss with you, man, is this amazing religious awakening that you've kind of been a part of. And you mentioned that you kind of built this deeper relationship with God kind of in your high school days. What was that kind of like? And, I believe on your Instagram, you have Acts 20:24, and I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit and understand that a little bit for people.
Acts 20:24 says, I consider my life worth nothing to me if only I may finish the task set before me, the task of testifying to the gospel of God's grace. And so that verse just kind of became my life verse, to kind of consider my life worth nothing to me, to kind of put myself second to what God's desire is for my life and the way that he wants me to live. And so grace is the word that I would really key in on there, especially in my own spiritual journey or my own Christian walk, because like I mentioned before, I was always a goody two shoes in high school. Like I was always trying to make my parents happy. I was always trying to do the quote unquote right thing. And then when it came to religion and faith, I was basically trying to earn my stance or my position with God. I was trying to do enough good work. I was trying to be good enough, right? I was trying to constantly please God in some way, by doing the right things. And that completely, misses the point of the Christian faith and what Christ came for. I'm never going to be enough. Like I don't have any thing about me that deserves to be in the presence of God, right? No matter how good I am, it's not about me. It's not about what I've done, and not about the good works that I do. The good works and the things that God puts on my heart, that's a result of me having faith in Christ, knowing that he did it for me. Like he paid the penalty for my sin. It's the equivalent of me being sentenced to death and somebody walking in and they're just like, I've got it for that guy, and I'm the only one who can do it. And I've got it for that guy. He gets to go free. Like that's, it has nothing to do with what I did, except accepting the gift of what Christ has to offer for the forgiveness of sins, making me clean in the sight of God. And that's the thing that makes me want to work out my faith in every day and every decision and every way that I do things. And I'm not super old, but I'm old enough to know now that when I stray from that path, when I kind of go down another road, things don't always go as well for me as I would hope they do. And so I know that following his word and walking down his path has brought me the greatest joys in my life. It's also brought me some of the greatest trials in my life by following Christ. And he actually guarantees you that in the Bible. And what do we know about working out? What do we know about CrossFit? Is that it hurts. Like if you do it right, you go through some pain. You have to push through some pain in order to get the results and the health benefits you want. And your walk, my Christian walk and the walk of following God is no different, right? He's got things set up in your life that are going to be super hard and super difficult to overcome, but that's where you learn to lean more on him and lean more on his word rather than yourself. And you gain knowledge, you gain experience, you get stronger, you get better. Not just for yourself, but then when you see somebody else in that position, you can reach out a hand and be like, hey, I've been there. I've been right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what you're going through and I know how to help you out of that situation and help you through that situation. Good thing I corrected out and through, not just God doesn't always want to pull you out of the pain you're in. Right. And that's been the circumstance in my life and something I've had to learn a lot of different ways. But he wants to pull you through it, teach you something with it and make you a better person afterwards.
The way you articulate that is so thought-provoking. And I really appreciate you sharing that because it relates to people in all walks of spirituality and, definitely shows like a really unique way that CrossFit can kind of bring us all together through enduring through trials and tribulations. And with that being said, you experienced high-level success within the sport early on, 2011 to 2015. It's like podium. You're killing it. And then, you're in San Diego, you finish, on the podium that first year at the California Regional. And then that second year, you kind of missed it. And then following that, you went through a series of injuries. Would you touch a little bit on what that was like? You're used to all this success, and then all of a sudden, you come face to face with adversity.
Coming off of 2015, I had my best year ever at the games. I won the California Regional. Was feeling about as fit as I possibly could. I definitely had some lingering issues that, would turn out I needed to take better care of. But I came off of that and came into 2016 and I just don't think I put in the work. Like, I don't think I did enough of my homework, you know what I mean? And prepared enough. And like, I had no excuses with injuries or anything like that. I just didn't make it. The other guys were just better. I did really well. Like I don't think I had a single performance outside of the top 10 at that regional, but that performance got me 7th. I think
that regional was also super stacked.
Yeah. There was a lot of good competitors that year. Like there was a lot of heavy hitters who I think they took their lumps in like 1 or 2 years prior to that and really put in the work. And by the time 2017 16 rolled around, they were just in really great shape. And I wasn't good enough. Right. So like I made mistakes in that one. I just, did some dumb things and didn't make it. So got fired up for 2017, trained really hard. It was that time I moved back to Ohio, and went into that regional feeling good and ended up, I didn't tear my pec, but I was very close on that ring dip dumbbell snatch workout. I finished it and got through it, but on the set of 9, I remember going down for one of the ring dips, I think, and just felt, you just feel something give a little bit and it just feels off and it's not super painful initially, but it was like, that didn't feel right.
It's a little twinge that just like gets the wheels spinning in between your ears, and you're like, ooh, this could potentially get way worse if I don't address this now.
Yeah. And so went off the floor, got checked out, and had them, the medical team took me through some exercises and some different stuff. And they're just like, it doesn't look good. I mean, everything's still attached, but it's definitely either your pec or your bicep tendon is giving you some trouble right now. And I'm like, okay, like I'll see tonight, like I'll see how I feel tonight and then decide on tomorrow. And by later that night, I could barely put my seatbelt on with like turning to the side and opening my arm. And then I tried to come in and do like a rope climb, because I think rope climbs were in the next event, the first event on Saturday, I think it was. And I could like climb to the top slowly, and then coming down and everything was just super sketchy because I just didn't want to use my left arm. And the thought of, falling 15 feet from the top of a rope with a torn pec was not a good idea. I had a handful of other people there just like, hey, no, like don't go out there and try this. They're like, we can see you warming up right now, and things don't look right. You don't look good. Don't go try and do that. So I had to pull out from the regional for, just for my own health, basically, from injury there.
At that moment, like what's kind of going through your head?
Frustration, and you feel like you let people down. There's a lot of people, a lot of brands, a lot of everything who helped me get to where that I've gotten to, and help support me in the things that I believe in and the things that I've worked so hard for. And so when you just hit a roadblock right like that, and you don't even really get your chance to try to prove that you can go back, that was frustrating. You feel like you let other people down, you let yourself down, and those things, even though in the back of your head, it's not really in your control. Like these things happen. It's sports, people get hurt. Like that's how it goes. But yeah, so just tried to refocus and regain traction for 2018. And the thing that happened through most of 2017 and into 2018 was, I trained really hard and everything, maybe not as smart as I should have. And my check engine lights were coming on my body left and right. Like things were constantly flaring up. If it wasn't my back one day, it was the knee the next day. I could barely string like a week and a half of good training together before it's like, we should probably take a couple of days off because this feels weird, whatever. And so I went to get some of those things checked out early in January in 2018. And a doctor's like, hey, you can, there's some things here. Your labrum's probably a little bit messed up. You want to get checked out for your hernia. And I was, monitoring this extreme pain I had in my knee, which turned out to be my quad tendon. At night, if I did a lot of squats in a day or heavy squats or whatever, just a lot of below parallel, I wouldn't be able to straighten my knee laying in bed, straighten my leg. It would hurt so bad, I'd have to grab my leg and kind of move it. And then in the morning, usually some of the inflammation and stuff would go down and I'd feel a little better. But, the doctor said use caution and those kind of things, just be careful. And I'm like, you know what, I'll just do the open and we'll see how I'm feeling through that. When really I should have just called it. I should have been like, hey, you need a year of not doing this anymore because so many things are popping up, And so I think it was 18-2. I was dumbbell front squats and burpees over the bar and then a heavy clean. And I cleaned 315. And when I stood it up, it went up slow, but I didn't really feel any pain. And then put on 327 for one more lift with about a minute left. And as soon as I got under the bar and I kind of sat on my chest, my quad tendon just popped. It just snapped right off. And so that's the worst injury I've ever had. I've never had a surgery. I've been really lucky and fortunate through all of my athletic career. And I didn't handle it really well. I went down in a heap screaming and crying. It was really, it was intense for me. And I was lucky that Rich was there, Matt O'Keefe was there, Josh was there, and all those guys were there to kind of help me out through it and trying to get me to calm down a little bit. But that just set off an entire year of surgery, right? That one there, when I found out that's what happened, my surgeon, I had an excellent surgeon who's a former Ohio State football player, Greg Belisari, for Orthopedic One. He's like, yeah, here's the deal. And he just laid it out. He's like, you need to do exactly what I tell you to do. your quad will probably never be the same. Like your knee's not ever going to be the same. But then he also added like, hey, athletes find a way. So
I love that he said that. So many doctors don't know or understand the mindset of an athlete. And I think that's cool because it gave you hope and faith in the recovery process.
Yeah, I did, and he did it in the right way of like really drilling home how serious it was that I needed to do exactly what he was saying, or I was going to tear it again and just end up back in the same spot I was in. But also gave me that little outlet, like, yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but if you really want to do it, you can find a way to do it. You know what I mean? But all of 2018, most of 2018, I was recovering with the quad tendon. And then, like I said, I knew something was wrong with my labrum. It turned out I had a sports hernia. And so I just got those 2 other surgeries on top of the quad tendon because I was already out, I was already down. And that took a big toll. It was just like every time I made progress somewhere on one thing, I went in and got another surgery. And now I'm set back again for another 4 to 6 weeks where you can't really do anything. You have to just stay immobile and nurse yourself back to health. So that took a really long time to recover from all those things. And obviously the thing that I was most passionate about got taken away from me. A little bit of my identity got taken away with that, with the odds of going to the games for sure in 2019 was not even on the plate. Like that was not going to happen.
I really appreciate you touching on the identity component because you mentioned the alerts that were kind of popping to the forefront of your brain of, man, my check engine lights continue to pop on. And, your grit, your discipline, your mindset to be like, you know what, I can push through. I always have, led to some of these injuries. And that, for people within the strength and conditioning world or for high level CrossFit athletes, it's not just the physical, it's the mindset release. It's the untangling of some of the challenges that we face throughout the day to day, whether that's a challenging conversation, a rough email, financial stress, whatever it is. Like, aside from being a high level athlete, you're a human being first. And I think the identity thing is really important because you had so much success for so long. And now this ability to express yourself artistically is kind of being taken away from you, not by choice. And at a time when you're like, man, I'm around these high level guys like the Matt O'Keefes, the Josh Bridges, the Rich Fronings, and all those guys. Will you touch on like the specificity of identity and kind of in your brain, you're thinking, is this it? Am I ever going to compete in this again? And, now, looking back, we know you made it through and you're training at a high level again. But sometimes when you're in it, it's like this unique mystery looking forward of like, what if I don't?
It's interesting because in terms of identity, with all the spiritual stuff we talked about before, and, I have my faith in Christ, that's where I'm supposed to find my true identity, right? In those things and in what, God believes of me. And I've actually been coached and taught on the fact that like, hey, you got to be careful not to wrap up your entire identity just in sport, because that's fleeting. That's going to be gone at any moment. And if that's all that you think that you are, once that's taken away, you're going to be sitting there with nothing and thinking that you're nothing. And so even though I was coached on that, when I got all of that taken away from me and I couldn't it was hard to go work out because I couldn't do the things at the level that I used to do them at. I couldn't lift as much weight. I couldn't, couldn't go as hard as I wanted to. I had to take more time off, all those things. And it really revealed to me like how much of my identity was still rooted in being like a CrossFit Games athlete. And so that hit me really hard all through 2019. 2019 was super rugged because of that. Like I got super depressed because of that, and just like a handful of other things like compounding on top of it. Yeah, it was really tough. And but that's where that training comes into play, right? Like I mentioned before, nobody's immune to horrible times. Nobody, and no matter what you see on Instagram, and it could be the billionaire and the person who has nothing, at some point they're all hit with a very, very low valley in life, right? Like that's just the way that it goes. That's part of life. And so I can remember having a conversation with a mentor of mine. And again, like it was the most direct, like sobering words that I actually really needed to hear. And I was talking to him like, yeah, like I can't get out of my funk. I can't get out of this mood that I'm in. And, I'm praying, I'm reading the Bible, I'm doing all these things. Like I'm trying to like, understand and come to terms with everything and And like, I'm telling him all these things that I think I'm doing again to earn my way out of being depressed and being upset. And he just paused for a second. He's like, I got to be honest. If you're doing all those things, it sounds like you're right where you need to be. Like, kind of like sorry, not sorry. I mean, on some level, he's like, I mean, let me be clear. Like, I'm not happy that you're having a rough time, but you're handling it the right way. And it's still uncomfortable, but this is what it's going to take. You're on the right road. You just need to keep going. Like, just keep plodding along, like down this path, and you're going to get there eventually, but that was something that I really needed to hear because, I was probably looking for some sympathy and looking for, whatever easy answer that a friend was going to give me. He didn't really serve it up to me that way. He was just like, hey, you're doing the right things and you're right where you need to be right now. So just dig in. Where
so hard to hear in the moment, but it was so thankful after the fact.
Yeah.
It's almost like those words are going to ruin our friendship right now. Right. And you're like pissed at him. And then all of a sudden when you get to the other side and as this, depression and this challenging valley dissipates like an Alka-Seltzer tablet, all of a sudden you get to the other side and you're like, those words actually kind of saved me.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. And like,
well, I really appreciate you sharing that, man. Sometimes I feel like the perception of, these really high level masculine males is like, oh no, they're stoic. They don't feel pain. They don't get tired. They don't show vulnerability. And it's like, no. You are the way you are because of your authenticity and because of the valleys that you've gone through, which have enabled you to get to the peaks.
100%. Right. I mean, I couldn't agree more. That's literally how it goes.
Other than that conversation, what were some of the other strategies that you leaned on to get yourself out of that funk? Was there journaling? Were there relationships built? Like, what did your training look like? Was it cognitive fitness? Was it, trying your best to do crossover symmetry and banded work? Like, what was your outlet?
I think it was the most important thing for me to focus on is constantly focus on the things that you can do. Stop thinking about all the things that you can't do right now and that all these other things that are going wrong and that you perceive are going wrong in your life right now, but focus on what you can do. So in the gym, even when I was in a brace for my leg, it's like, hey, you can bench, you can do curls, you can do, you can pull on the skier handles. I think I sat on the floor one time and just turned the Concept 2 handles or the foot pedals on the bike, the Concept 2 biker. It's like, and you just have to think of it that way. Like, hey, like I may be only gaining an inch today, but an inch is better than nothing. And this is the only way that I can do that is focusing on the things that I can do and that I can accomplish today. And then wake up and do it again, and keep going, keeping that mental attitude and mindset with everything else, right? Like not just working out, but whatever I was doing for my work, whatever I was doing for, my relationships, whatever I was doing for, it's just like, hey, one step at a time and eventually you'll get there. And eventually I did get there, right? Like I think sometime in 2020, I want to say it was the fall, probably about a year ago, I PR'd my back squat, like lifetime, but
wow,
it was only 5 pounds, but like it was still a PR. You know what I mean?
That's huge, man. I mean, for people that have been in the space for a long time, PRs are few and far between. The longer you're in the sport, especially coming off some injuries, getting a little bit older, changes in, not just, your operating system, but all the different things that are kind of on your plate, your responsibilities grow a ton.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things that happens the older you get. Obviously there's physical decline and those things are just part of life, like that happens. But once people get older, they just start making different priorities, so not as much time gets spent on training, or maybe as much time gets spent on training, not enough time gets spent on sleep, eating, stretching, getting body work done. And so all those things that start to fall off, I think are largely a part of that. But I was just stoked to get that. And obviously it's spent
that's
more.
Huge with regards to momentum building and just getting a nice little, you need wins sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think like your storytelling ability throughout your journey, not only control the controllable, but, don't allow what you can't do to affect what you can do. And then also, like, it's okay to go into the gym and maybe pick an easier workout sometimes so you can get that win. If you're going in and putting yourself into the ground, doing workouts that you see online that are just above your pay grade and you're just not even close to, comparable times, it doesn't feel good, man. You got to have some fun in there to keep the longevity and the momentum rolling.
Yeah, a good example of that was I did the open announcement workout in 2016. I think it was 16.2. Toes to bars, double unders, cleans, and the clean weight went up every round that you completed. And that workout came back up in 2019. And like I had to like just get my head wrapped around it. It's like, hey, you can do this, but you're going to stop once you get to 225. Like, it's not smart for you to go any further with your leg and your shoulder and everything else. Like, just do the workout, see how you feel when you get through 22, 25, and then just stop. Like, that's okay. Like, that's your win for right now. That's your new PR right now for today. And so that's what I did. And like, I did feel a lot of reward with that. I did feel like I got a win, even though it wasn't a personal best, but like, it was like, hey, this is where your bar is at right now. So let's get over that hurdle and celebrate it as a win and move on from there.
I think that's so awesome, Dan. Like, I think a lot of people get into this mindset of like, especially former athletes, if I can't do what I used to do, why do it at all?
Right.
And I think you're very relatable, where it's like, hey, I do have more responsibilities. I do have different priorities. My body is behaving a little bit differently, but we can still do it. It's just got to be a little bit different. And the guy that went from 0 to 10, you did that one way with a, one unique operating system. But then the guy that goes from 10 to 20 needs to be a completely different guy. You got to shed some of those old thought patterns and old limiting beliefs in order to upgrade your personal operating system. And I think that's so relatable to, people, but also just shows that, you can do things a little bit differently to the beat of your own drum and still have high level success.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to add to what you just said. It's really good, but yeah.
That's great, man. What does your training kind of look like leading up to this last year's CrossFit Games? You ironically said on Sivan's podcast, he said, hey, Dan, you going to go Masters? And you're like, no, absolutely not. And so what was that journey kind of like, where originally, you had a certain belief around, the Masters competitions and the categories, and then that kind of shifted over time. What was that mindset like? And then how did your training kind of shift?
Yeah, it shifted obviously with all the injuries that happened. And like, I really would have liked to get back out on the floor one more time. That was kind of my goal. And when I started looking at all the different shifts and priorities and all the things that we were just talking about, it became like obvious to me, like, hey, if you want to do that, you're probably going to have to go Masters. You know what I mean? Or I knew like how much time I was going to be able to dedicate to training, and whatever that got me is what it got me. Like, if it got me to the games, amazing, like awesome, crazy, good. But I knew like at 90 minutes a day for the most part, sometimes maybe 3 hours a day, and maybe on the weekend, that's not going to be enough to cut it. It's way too competitive for that in just the regular men's division. So I'm like, all right, like, hey, you're just gonna have to humble yourself and, eat your words a little bit. And if you want to get back out on the floor, maybe you go in the 35 to 39 division. So I went ahead and did it, qualified, and had planned on going, and then got COVID at the games right when I didn't want it. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, really just letting my pride down a little bit, and, recognizing that it was okay for me to go out there that way. I mean, at the time, like you mentioned on that podcast, I was like, if I'm not on the highest stage, there's no way I even want to think about going back out there. But then when all of it was taken away from me, really not my choice, like, I wasn't like really ready to retire or stop competing. That kind of changed my perspective a little bit. Then there's a couple other guys that were in the Masters division that we really would have had fun competing with: James Hobart, Kyle Kasperbauer, a handful of people who I've competed with in the past. So I was really looking forward to that, outside of just getting back out on the floor in any way that I could. But that just wasn't the case. That's not what ended up happening. So
yeah, well, congratulations for making it, and congratulations for the gentle shift in mindset that provided a unique opportunity for you. Before we unpack a little bit the adversity of experiencing COVID right when you got to the games, what are your thoughts on this new partnership with Noble? I mean, you were a guy that was around it early on when there wasn't really many sponsorships. Then it went through the Reebok phase or chapter. And now we've moved on to the Noble journey. When you walked into that locker room and you saw the stadium and everything and how far the sport has evolved, what were some of the thoughts that went through your head?
I mean, it's just cool. Like you said before, or like we talked about before, my first regional that I went to was in a park in Logan, Ohio. It was outside and there was just a rig that was strapped to the grass. And like we deadlifted from a deficit kind of, because we were deadlifting in the grass and we had a max deadlift. That was the pinnacle of CrossFit competition at the time. Like, oh my gosh, we have a regional. Like, this is amazing. And then you go to like Madison and it's just a blank canvas that they can do anything with. So all the things that they developed there between the obstacle courses and the turf field and, just the different venues, it's just incredible. And obviously you need to have other companies' support to make that happen. And so Reebok was for the longest time. And, now it's Noble, and Noble definitely did grow inside the CrossFit community organically, I guess you could say, more than any other company who just maybe came in from the outside. That's not to say Reebok didn't adopt the whole CrossFit lifestyle at all, because they did, and everything they did out at Reebok CrossFit One and all those different things. But it's cool to see bigger businesses get involved. I mean, I think ideally at some point, I don't know. I'm not a business guy, but at some point when I look at it, being a little bit removed from it, like competing is not the way that I'm really trying to earn my living anymore. It is still something that I do, but being a little removed from it, it's like at some point I feel like the games will have to find a way to bring on multiple partners and multiple big sponsors. Because when it's just one brand that dominates, and very grateful for like what that one brand does, it limits what the athlete's marketability at the games and in the space. When it's just one jersey, one shoe, it's not one shoe, but when it's just one title thing, I think there's more potential there for it to look like the PGA Tour or something like that, where Oakley, Nike, Adidas, Noble, like you name it, you can be involved. It's just finding a way to do that and navigate it. I don't have the answer. It's easy to sit up here and talk about it, how wonderful it could be.
Yeah, it's a good idea though. When you relate it to the PGA Tour, you look at the World Surf League, or you look at like the X Games.
Yeah.
Those are great analogies where the sport could potentially evolve to over time for sure. And I'm so glad you at least got to be a part of it. What was it like, in your brain? You made it back to the competition floor. Maybe that was for closure. Maybe that was the start of a new chapter. I don't know that we necessarily have the answer on that right now, but like having that being taken away, in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm sure that led to a little bit of soul searching and reflection. And, what was that journey kind of like for you?
It was frustrating, but because of all of the other things that I've been through, like it honestly wasn't that big of a deal. Like it wasn't life crushing to me. It wasn't so I've done the thing, you know what I mean? Like I've done it before. And this was just a weird, outside circumstance again that I had little control over. I was frustrated for a couple days. I was only sick for a couple days and then was kind of over it. And it's like, well, this is just what happened. And, you move forward. It's not, because of everything that I've been through before, it definitely didn't hurt me as bad as it probably would have 5-6 years ago, or maybe, before that. So took my time with like recovering, making sure I was healthy, making sure everything was fine with me. And then, just started slowly easing back into training again. So the mental part of it and all those things that was already built up, like the defense against feeling bad for myself or feeling super sorry for myself. It was like, well, hey, you made it. This happened and it is what it is. The games did everything they could to get me to compete safely and be there with the other competitors. Like, so kudos to them for, bending over backwards to try to get me to compete in any way that I could. It just didn't work out. And I understand what the rules are. I have like my own opinions on all of it, but that's the rules, and you got to play by the rules, and it's okay. Like, it's fine. You know, if I want to make it again, I'll make it again, and we'll go back in 2022.
Your mindset and resilience are second to none, dude. And I think that's one of the things that are really leading to you becoming such a great analyst as well. And that's a space that you've played in a little bit with Rogue, and kind of having the earpiece on and being in front of the camera and doing the whole shebang. What's it been like, you know, being an analyst and, you know, having some of the, you know, you've been behind the curtain, but you've also been, you know, on the development and coaching and, you know, the other side of things. So it's like you've kind of played each role, and now you're serving a little bit of a role as an analyst here and there. How has that kind of been? And what's the respect factor like, you know, when there's so much that goes into production?
Yeah. For anybody who hasn't done it and you haven't been behind the scenes at all at the games, you have no idea like how much, Stefan Roche put it a really good way one time when I was an analyst and I was running around trying to get an interview, and I was like, "Hey, what's up, Stefan?" And I'm like, "How's everything going?" And he's like, you know, it's like a duck moving across water. Everything looks really calm here, but underneath it's just like a crazy activity. And I'm like, that explains this whole situation perfectly.
Stefan actually taught my level 1 at
awesome.
University of San Diego. And I was doing thrusters. He's like, "What? A big guy doing thrusters? I love this. Team Too Tall." It was so funny. That was my first interaction with him.
He's the best. He is a gem. Like, he is.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Yeah, I'm super fortunate that CrossFit like let me even attempt to do it. And so I did it for the games for a couple years, both regional stuff, and then at the games, stay at the desk and that kind of stuff. Katie was nice enough to let me, you know, basically try and do some stuff for the Iron Game for their broadcast. And all the while, the number one person that I'm always talking to, if it wasn't a guy named Joe, it is usually Charlie Doobie. And he's just a salt of the earth, wonderful, awesome, like, human being. He's so much fun to be around, and he's so good at what he does. And he's very passionate about running a good show, along with Sean Woodland and Pat Sherwood and Andy Sakamoto and all the other people that I got to work with. But it's funny having that earpiece in, like, when you're watching somebody just sitting there staring and like smiling at the camera and not saying anything, it's like, you have no idea how much is going on in here. Like, the stuff that's going on in the truck, sometimes it's almost comical. Like, you have to almost not laugh on set while things are going on, because, you know, most of the time it's, especially when it's Charlie, he's got this like soft, velvety, like wonderful voice, and he's always super positive and super nice. And so he'll come in your ear and and you have like a run of show in front of you with all these numbers and like what you're trying to talk about next and your notes and everything. And you'll be sitting there looking at the run of show, and all of a sudden Charlie comes in your ear and he's like, "Okay, and 106, 109, and 112 are no longer on the list. So scratch those off. We're going to jump up to 115 and da 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 da." And like, you're just like looking at your paper and the camera's on. You're trying not to freak out, and you're like, "Okay," and like quietly like turning the page and like trying to look down and figure out what you have to talk about next. And there's a lot going on, right? And then there's also times where like all of a sudden the thing will come on and somebody's like, "Where's my effing graphic?" And like all of a sudden they just cut out, and like that's going on in your head, like while you're trying to talk about something. So it's intense in the moment, but then it's absolutely hilarious to talk about afterwards. There was actually one story I wanted to share about that. Sam Farber was announcing, not announcing, but leading the show that myself and Andy Sakamoto were on. And Andy Sakamoto is one of the most fun people to hang out around with on planet Earth. She's like the greatest, funniest person you're ever going to meet, and just always fun. And so it was always like super fun to do the shows with her. When I wasn't like commentating, I was laughing because of her. And so we're standing next to each other, and apparently both of us either missed this item that was on the sheet or it wasn't on our sheet, because Sam was going down some things, and all of a sudden he basically served up a question that wasn't on the list. And because it wasn't on the list, like neither of us said anything. Like, we just sat there and looked at him like, and like came into our ear, and he's like, react, like say something. And neither of us say anything. And Sam, being the professional that he is, he just scooped it up and he's like, "Okay, and we're going to go back to wherever." And like, you could barely notice it in the broadcast, but after it happened, I was just like drenched in sweat. I'm like, "You moron." Like, you're so stupid. You got somebody asking you a question, and both Ian and I just sat there like idiots, like smiling at the camera, didn't say a word because we didn't think we were supposed to. And so then there's somebody always in your ear coming in and talking, and it's been an awesome learning experience. I love it and love to jump at the chance anytime I get to do it.
You've done a really good job. I've really enjoyed any time you are broadcasting, observing and reaping the entertainment that comes with that. But I also think you touched on like the sweat component. People don't realize, I don't know, for me personally, even when I'm podcasting, like when I'm thinking, I almost feel like I'm working harder than when I'm doing a workout. And it's so fascinating because early on of like the podcast stages, you always feel like you almost have to like fill the empty gaps, and that stillness is not okay. And then over time, you realize there's like power within the pause. It's okay to process your thoughts. Are those things that, you experienced a little bit early on where you felt like you had to talk and you're like, whoa, be quick, but not in a hurry?
Yeah. I would basically follow the lead of like Sean, or basically somebody who I would try to watch those guys and listen to how they talk, listen to their cadence, listen to like the things that they say, how they make their points, and all of those different things, and like try to mimic that and somehow in, my own way. And then you go back, it's like anything else. It's like competing. You go back and watch your performance. So you go on and you watch, and you know how you felt during it and while you were saying it. And then you might have thought something came off really well, but then you go watch it and you're like, oh, that I didn't really like string that point together actually very well. So the next time I try to drive home something like that or relate my personal experience to whatever the athletes are doing on the floor, you need to say X, Y, and Z instead of whatever you said, So yeah, it's like getting reps in. You just have to do it, understand that the first time you do it is going to be really rugged and it's not going to be great.
Yep.
That's what the other guys and girls, the professionals that are out there to kind of help out with that.
Yeah, for sure. It's all an experiment, man.
Yeah.
What's going on with this awesome thing that you're putting together called Always Train? Seems like a pretty cool journey that you're on. I got to read a little bit about it, and I just also love that you tie together the three lanes of the physical, the mental, and the spiritual capacities.
Yeah, so it's primarily right now is the physical is the big one that's getting utilized on the program. So alwaystrain.com is the website, and I offer 5 different training programs on there for one monthly fee, $14.95 a month. And it's strength training, competitive CrossFit, GPP, just general physical preparedness, my own style of like bodybuilding workouts. I wanted to do something unique. So I kind of took the intensity piece from CrossFit and the rep schemes and AMRAPs and all those things, and just incorporated nothing but bench press, bicep curls, tricep extensions, all of those things into there. And then Farm Strong is like the low equipment option, basically, for all 5 of those. And so like I have a lot of fun programming those. I've programmed for sports teams for a long time. It's something that I enjoy doing. Everybody who's on there, like I like interacting with and love the community that's on there. And I'd look forward to kind of developing some of the other prongs there with the spiritual and mental side of it too. There's a little component to the spiritual one because I have like a faith episode that I put on YouTube every now and then where I basically recap sermons that I have at my local church. We have a great pastor and a great church at one church here in Columbus. And so I'll just kind of reiterate a lot of the things that he said, but how they kind of landed on me. And so that's kind of how I've used that component there. But really it's, the main ways that I've been passionate about training and training other people throughout my career and providing that to the community.
That's really cool, man. I also love, you had like a little quote as a part of your mission that read, life is short. You'll not build your memorial in a day, but you will build it daily. Always train. I thought that was pretty rad.
Yeah. Everything is like you said, everything's an opportunity. It's all about getting reps in all the time, every day. Kind of the attitude of like, hey, don't waste a day, don't waste an experience, don't waste, that moment. You should always be training for something in everything that you're doing, whether that's, you get up in the morning and read a book, you're establishing good habits, you're training yourself in some way, either down one road or down another, right? Down a negative road or down a positive with every little decision that you make. So that's kind of where that term comes from. And then that quote actually aligned with it. That's a quote that I've had with me for a long time by a pastor named Brad Bell out in Fresno, California. I think he got it from like a pastor that he had a long time ago. But you're not going to build your memorial in a day, but you will build it daily. So, you got to make each day count, and you got to make all of the reps count that you're doing throughout that day, because little by little you're building something, right? You're constantly building some attitude, some habit, some whatever. And so you want those things to be as positive and as good as they can be.
That's really cool, man. What are all the things that you're getting yourself involved in these days? Are you still working with Rogue? I saw that you're doing some stuff with First Form. You've got Always Train. What's day-to-day life kind of looking like for you right now? And how do you juggle all these different, things that you play with on the daily?
Yeah, I'm super lucky and fortunate to get to work with company like First Form. And obviously I'm, worked with Rogue for a very, very long time. And it's fun. It's exciting. It's difficult, creating, whether it's creating content for social media, creating content for, usually it's First Form at this point. They do a lot of great things within their app and within their business. They're a supplement company, but they're way, way more than that. They're way focused on diet, exercise, and nutrition, and helping people out that way. That's like their primary focus, and how like supplements can kind of tie into that is obviously part of their business. But they do so many things. They do so many things the right way. They have a lot of registered dietitians on staff that help people out through the app with adjusting their diet and all those things. So they're just a great company to be involved with, an excellent company in the fitness space that gets it. Like they understand how to help people. And I think it's every quarter they do a $50,000 giveaway to just a random person who's putting in the work and made a bunch of changes in their life and lost a lot of weight and like really bought into the system. And they're called these transformation challenges, which we're in the middle of right now. Actually, we're in the middle of the fall one. And then do like a piece on them, say like, hey, this person was, 400 pounds, whatever they were. This is what they did, and this is how they executed. This was all the things that they were fighting in their lives, and look at the success that this person got. And basically, like, if this person can do it, you can do it too. You know what I mean? And they have those stories over and over and over again, and it's just so great to see. It's really cool. So it's great being involved with them and everything that they do. Always Train. Obviously, whenever anything comes up for Rogue Fitness, I'm always going to be game for them. Like the Legends competition and all those things, being involved with everything that they do. And so, yeah, I mean, I keep myself busy with all those things, and the barn and that kind of stuff too.
The barn is coming together really, really well, man. It's super cool to see all the people that come visit you and some of the cool workouts that you do in there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's been a long road hacking away at that. That was one of the things I actually started on when I was hurt, because I didn't have anything else to do. So it's like, hey, you're either going to do this or you're not. Like, you want to make this a space to work out in. And so you just start chipping away. But yeah, that takes up some time. I need to get it sealed up before the winter time again, because it's about to get really cold. I know you don't know what that's like.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you're at, but
for sure, man. What's it been like working with First Form? Is Andy Frisella the owner of that company?
Andy Frisella, yeah.
Yeah, and he puts on like that really cool 75 hard thing that a lot of people have been doing.
Yep.
What is 75 hard? I think it's a really cool habit-based thing for people to kind of just to get a general understanding around.
Yeah, it's a lot of people look at it as like a diet program or something like that, or like some kind of, thing to just help you lose weight. And again, like it does do that, but it's way more than that. It is, like you mentioned, it's like a lifestyle change or development program. And so there's a handful of standards that you have to hit every day. You have to do a diet, doesn't matter what diet it is. You just have to do some kind of diet, right? And adhere to it for all 75 days. You have to do 2 workouts, one of them 45 minutes each, I believe. One of them has to be outside. And then there's just a handful of other things. Read 10 pages a day of a book, So it's all these little things that you're kind of required to do it during the day, that by the time you get through it, it's like, you've read potentially multiple books. You've lost a bunch of weight. You found out that I can work out 45 minutes twice a day if I have to or want to. I can make the time to do that. So, and really you're finding out the discipline that you actually have within yourself that just hasn't been pulled out of you yet, right? That hasn't been maybe expressed in your life yet, and you're not sure how to get there. 75 hard will definitely get you there. When I first looked down the list of things you have to do, even I looked at it and was like, okay, that's pretty tough. Like, that's not, 75 days is not a short amount of time to try to be that disciplined with everything. So a ton of people have a lot of success on that. Bickle, I think he's in it right now. I don't know what day he's on.
He just finished it. I spoke with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And I really do think it's kind of cool, like for people that understand the concepts around, the diet that works is the one that you actually do, right? People jump around and diet hop or program hop or try something for a week and then decide that it's not going to work anymore. And I think ingraining like, hey, whatever you do, stick to it for 75 days. Try your best to exercise a little bit of consistency, right? And like, it doesn't talk about what you do during those 45-minute workouts. It just means get yourself out there and move twice a day. One of those workouts being outside, so you get acclimated to the elements and get exposed to things other than just artificial light and sitting behind a computer screen. I think it also emphasizes like no alcohol and trying to drink like a gallon of water a day, which hydration is great for all of us. We could all use more of that. And at the end of the day, man, it's instilling good habits. It's taken, some of the pages from James Clear's, Atomic Habits, and it's combining something that's really simple for people. It's within an app. I think you take a picture of yourself once a day and you can, integrate that into the app. And that's just good feedback. And like, hey, I'm headed in the right direction. I'm putting one foot in front of the other and, trying to do the right thing consistently over time to become a better version of yourself. And I think it's really cool and aligns really well with you, your mindset, your character, and everything that you kind of stand for. And I'm just so thankful to connect with you today, man. It's so good to see your face. I'm glad we got to share, some of the layers underneath, the CrossFit surface level accolades that you've experienced within your life and will continue to experience. And not only am I a fan, Dan, but I'm very thankful to call you a friend. And I really appreciate you spending some time with us on our Invictus Mindset anniversary episode. And as we wrap things up, man, like, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, not off the top of my head. I'm just super grateful that you guys brought me on to share a little bit about my story and what I'm doing and getting to chat with you. And like I said, like super valued my time every time we worked out or hung out in San Diego. And, sitting here now, wish it was a little bit more than it was. But just thank you guys for having me on.
We appreciate you, man. Keep doing all the cool things that you're doing. Don't be a stranger. I will make sure we give you a shout out when the episode goes live.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
If you enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Dan Bailey today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become.